Real talk, I got a question for you guys, and it's a legitimate one. Now, this is for the watch wizards. The muggles are not going to understand. Why is it that the Casio Duro, as big of a hype that it got, as of a cult following that it has, why is it that it was excluded from being called a homage monster? It's essentially a Rolex clomage with the change of maybe some hands, but other than that, even some of the bezels were to look like a Rolex kind of vibe, right? A Rolex Submariner. But I don't really hear talk of anybody calling it a homage, and it never really entered the conversation. And the fact that it's a quartz watch also was never brought up. Now, this is not to bash Casio. I absolutely love my Casio Duro, and I think it is fantastic for the watch community and watch enthusiasts. I'm just playing devil's advocate, I guess, and I was legitimately curious as to why that one was excluded. If Tandoori or Pagani Design does a homage to a watch, everybody loses their mind, and at least it's a mechanical watch. However, Casio, I guess it's in the name. I guess because it's Casio doing it, they're kind of excluded from being categorized as doing a homage. I mean, we see a lot of Seiko homages to the Speedmaster or something else of the sort, and they don't seem to get the same backlash. So I was just wondering. Anyway, I was gonna make this and call this a year on the wrist, and I legitimately thought I owned this watch for about 1, maybe 2 years, but it actually was March of 2022 when I purchased this watch, and it's been in my collection ever since, and I absolutely love it. It's worth doing a relook to it, and there's a reason why I'm doing that. For 2025, I'm focusing on what I have in my collection. I already have about 50 watches, so it's gonna be the year of the strap. At least for the first 6 to 8 months, I really wanna hone in on just enjoying what I have and create content on things that are already in my collection instead of just going after the next best and greatest thing. Here's the deal. With my Duro, I pretty much modified that watch 3 times over. There's 3 different things that I changed about the watch pretty much off rip. I don't think I owned the watch that long before I started doing that. And if you guys can see behind me, that is where all the magic happens. I have all of my tools back there. That's where I do a lot of my recording. So I am no stranger to doing modifications, and the Casio Duro was not safe. And here's the deal. The Duro is a very affordable watch, and I probably paid more on the modifying parts than the watch costs itself. But that was part of how I like to enjoy watch collecting. That was really something that float my boat. I love modifying, I love tinkering, I love building watches. And even when I come across a watch like an F91W, I got a Vario strap on here, and I also did a change in the actual polarization to a blue. So when I got the Duro, I decided I wanted to change the bezel insert out because the original one isn't ceramic, and I like that ceramic type of look. Yes, it does scratch less, but I also like that kind of like glowing type of look to it, that shine type of look to it. So I actually started off changing out the bezel insert. In fact, I believe I ordered the bezel insert, the crystal, and the bracelet at the same time, and I got that from AliExpress. Now, I'm not gonna link the store at this point because AliExpress stores come and go about every other week, so you could probably go on there today and just research a Casio Duro for parts if you guys are interested after seeing my version of it and you want to do it yourself. It's something that you have to decide to do if you're willing to pay for those parts, but it makes it fun and it makes it exciting, and it attached me to this watch even more so, even though I was in the very early stages of collecting when I added it to my collection. And now that's what I think makes this watch so great. It's so accessible, right? So it's not an expensive watch, and even if you just get it factory, you can really enjoy everything from the watch. I personally didn't enjoy the factory strap for too long. I ordered those 3 parts and I swapped them out as fast as I could. Now the bezel insert is probably one of the easiest things, I mean, aside from the strap itself, but the bezel insert isn't that hard to change. As long as you get the right size, you can go on AliExpress, and the way that I like to remove it is I like to sit it in alcohol overnight, make sure the crown, of course, is closed all the way, and then pretty much the alcohol is gonna work its magic. It's gonna loosen up the glue, and then you could swap that out. So that was the bezel, and usually when you buy a bezel insert, they include the glue to reattach it. So that was the first thing that I wanted to do. Then I have a crystal press back there. Pop that bad boy out. Now I changed the mineral crystal to a sapphire crystal, and it had a blue AR coating because I liked at the time, and I can recall 3 years ago the reason why I got the Duro. One, everyone was saying that it was a great value. I'm part of buying into the hype, less so much so now, right? Because I have my own individual values that I have in the watches that I buy, and I can pretty much assess what I like. But when you're starting off, I get it. You want to kind of follow what more experienced people are putting into their collection or what they're saying about watches, and that's okay so long as you do further research. You can get very excited about a watch and then it doesn't even fit your wrist. So I always recommend, even if you're watching my own videos, I do my best to be objective about watches, but I can't help and be human and add what I really think about the watch. So whenever you're watching a reviewer's breakdown for a watch, go ahead and do some research on your own. The main thing you want to do especially is make sure that that watch even fits for your wrist, because I'm saying that the original Casio Duro is the next best thing since sliced bread, but I also have a 7¼ inch wrist, so it fits my wrist very, very well. And we're going to talk about the smaller version of it before we close things out. So I changed that bezel insert, I changed the crystal, and then what was left was the bracelet. Now, I didn't realize at the time how detrimental it was to get something that wasn't directly from Casio. This bracelet actually has Casio branding on it, but it was from AliExpress. And if I could do things over, I would get it originally from Casio. It is what it is. I already purchased it. And at the time, Casio didn't have the bracelet to the original models. They are now doing that, and you guys can get a bracelet for it. And I'm not entirely sure if the quality versus what I got from AliExpress is going to be better than Casio. I'm sure that it's still an affordable bracelet, so it's not going to be crazy specced out. It's probably not going to be milled. It's going to be stamped like the one that I have. But I also got the bracelet, and I changed those 3 things out, and that's how I enjoyed my Casio Duro from the very beginning. And I absolutely am in love with the watch now in my collection, and I can't believe that it's been actually 3 years that I've owned it. Now, my collection has grown sizably. I'm at 50 watches now, so that's why I'm kind of dialing back and trying to enjoy what's in my collection before moving on. And I know what you're gonna say, easier for me to do because I'm a reviewer and people send me watches whether I keep them or not, and you're not wrong. However, we are putting in some work to make these videos at the same time, to be fair. Moving forward, Casio knew and understood that the size of the watch wasn't going to fit for everybody's wrist, so they decided to come out with a smaller version, and that smaller version cost more money. Here's where it bites my chaps a little bit. I don't understand why some big brands work a little bit backwards when it comes to doing something for a new iteration. We see that with Seiko and their SKX and their Seiko 5 model, where yes, they gave you the hacking, but they gave you less water resistance, and it was pretty much the same thing with Casio. They gave us the smaller size, but it had less water resistance. And I'm not sure if that was the only thing. I can only recall that being the standout thing. And I know that most of us are not going 200 meters under the water anyway. But as enthusiasts, we are heavily focused on specifications, and that is something that we admire. So for me, I feel like even if it's going to cost more, and I do understand that that's business, they know that it's a super popular watch. So when they come out with a newer one that's going to fit more wrists, they're going to charge more because the demand is there. I get that. But when you start sacrificing quality, or at least when you start dialing back the specifications, that could be annoying for a lot of people, and I wish that they could just kind of give us what we want. My rant is over. Going back to that bezel swap out, by the way, I also like the fact that the bezel, the ceramic bezel, was a lighter color to match the second hand. Yes, we're being very particular, and that's exactly how I was watch collecting early on, because again, I was heavily into modding and building my own watches, so seeing every single detail and paying attention to all of the matching colorways and everything of the like was important for me. So that is another plus side that I got for going to a ceramic bezel. It definitely is elevated by having the bracelet, even though it's not an expensive one. And then again, having that sapphire crystal. Now here's the deal with sapphire crystal. I own Vostoks, and having mineral crystal is not the end of the world, and we know that there are some benefits to it, but one of the biggest takeaways is that it scratches a lot easier. If you got some poly watch, it's not gonna ruin the watch at the end of the day. You can remove most scratches that you're gonna get on the crystals. So if that's not something that you're willing to change out for your Casio, then have at it. Now, another thing that got me was the fact that it was quartz. Now, I don't have anything against quartz watches whatsoever, but One of the highlighted things that I really did like about the Casio Duro is that even though it was a quartz module, right? It was a quartz movement powering it, it still has heft. The watch head alone, and I do have a bracelet on here, but that's not what's really giving it its heft. It still has and feels like it has a lot of weight, and I'm not sure if mine weighs a little bit more than average because of the other parts that I swapped out, but I think an overall average to that watch is having that heft to it, and that's something that people like and recognize. Another option that you can explore is to also mod the Casio 2784 inside the Duro to a movement of a Seiko VH31 to give it more of a smooth sweep, and you won't have to worry about the second hand hitting the markers at that point. In doing so, you will lose the date wheel at the 3 o'clock aperture unless you replace the dial as well. I personally don't like this route simply because I feel that at that point, too much of the watch's originality is lost in my opinion. I think of the parts that I replaced in this Casio Duro being more so of an upgrade while keeping the watch's DNA. But if I can find a smoother sweep, keep the date wheel aligned with the original dial and hands, I'll be the first in line for that modification. Holla at me if this is possible. Another plus side to having the Casio Duro is if you're going on vacation, right? Again, I have my F91W, and that is globally recognized to be an affordable watch, so I don't have to really worry if I'm in a foreign territory and if somebody gets the wrong idea. But the Duro is also something that is very affordable and something that you're not going to regret too much if you were to lose it. I mean, I probably will regret mine because I did a lot of work to it, but then that would give me a reason to do another mod, which I should do anyway. But anyway, it's a perfect travel companion. No, you're not going to get 2 time zones, but you are going to get the water resistance on there. So if you do some aquatic activity, whether it be on the pool, beach, scuba diving, whatever it is, it's going to have more than what you need in order to go on that vacation and not have to worry about it. And because it has those seals, you could even take it onto the beach. So a fantastic affordable watch. If you're starting your watch collection, it's still one that I would recommend at this point, and I think it's for a good reason. But let me know what you guys think of the Casio Duro. Do you have one in your collection? Have you done any modifications to it? And is it something that you would recommend, or is it something that you would rebuy if you didn't have it in your collection, or maybe you sold it off thinking that you didn't want it, but now you realize you do, which is something that I'm afraid of, which is why I'm trying to enjoy what's in my collection right now. This way I make sure I don't make those mistakes, and the watches that I put in my collection moving forward are the right ones. So that's all I have for 2025 and my focus and what's going on in my collection. I want to do some look backs at other watches that are in my collection. Stay tuned for those type of videos. Leave a comment down below of what you think of the Casio Duro at this point. I appreciate you guys for spending your most valuable asset, which is time, and I hopefully will see you in the next one.